Hello, everybody. I think we are ready to start with the webinar. So welcome to this webinar. Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you from Companion. Thank you also from Digital Bricks. Today we will be speaking about AI, and as speakers, of course, myself, I'm Vincent. I'm a partner at Patan. I'm the lead for the Companion Academy. And today we will have this webinar together with Max and Jamie from Digital Bricks. So hello, Max. Hello, Jamie.
Hey, Vincent. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Max Dinzer. I'm the Executive Director and one of the co-founders of Digital Bricks, mainly focusing on AI change management and adoption, as well as the EU AI Act.
Okay.
Everybody. I'm Jane Monroe. I'm born and raised in Liverpool, northwest of England. Moved to the Netherlands in 2019, and I'm the creative director of Digital Bricks.
Okay, thank you guys. And together we will talk today about the partnership of Digital Bricks and Companion. But of course, we will also be talking about the EU AI Act. And then after that, I think the biggest part is, of course, the EU AI Act. And after that, we will talk about our programs that we can, with which we can help you as partners to become compliant and knowledgeable with AI. But to start, I think we want to warm you up a little bit before we go into the EU Act. I think, for me, this is a very important webinar, let's say. We're starting 2025, and I think that we can say that basically we are in a new era, an era of AI. People talk about an AI shift, a big AI shift. And I think we can say that it's already happening. And why is that? Because we can see that the adoption of AI is incredibly fast. If we compare it with, for instance, the cloud adoption, which started a number of years ago, which is still going on. Customers are still, moving into the cloud. We are developing our solutions in the cloud. But if you look at AI, which is only a few years here, it goes much, much faster. Do you agree, Max or Jamie?
Definitely. We see that a lot of customers are adapting AI quite quickly. What we also see is that a lot of people bring their own AI to work. So right now, organizations are a little bit panicking, let's say, what to do with it. So the adoption rate is indeed fast. Everyone is getting used to leveraging ChatGPT and all these large language models for their daily activities. So we see that organizations want to control that a little bit more and, of course, put it into a business perspective.
Yeah, and if you look around you and you talk with colleagues, I mean, you can hear that everybody is using AI kind of apps and solutions in personal life, but also in professional life. I think it has penetrated with a speed that is incredible. Many of us can even miss an AI-driven chat every day. So it's gigantic, I think. And if you look at the numbers of businesses using AI today, it's growing incredibly fast. And I think and that's a little bit how I see it is we should have a holistic view on this because, of course, Microsoft is communicating to us every day about new features in the product, new features in Power Platform, new AI-driven features in BC, new AI-driven features in customer engagement. And that's nice, and that's part of the deal. I think it's part of the transformation that we are in. But we should see it broader, I think, than just products. And in my perspective, I believe it's going to be, or it is already, a kind of a value shakeup, right? Because if people are using AI-driven apps every day, they are used to get value in a microsecond. They get their answers in a microsecond. They get evaluations of data in a microsecond. And that is really changing, I think, how we should interact with our customers and how our solutions should be built and how our processes should be organized and how our services are organized. So there's a lot of work in front of us, I think. I don't know if you have additional perspectives to this, Max, or...
Definitely. That's what we really see, that the role of the Microsoft partner is actually also changing. You go away from these big, large hyperscale ERP, CRM implementations that we classically have. And now the buzzword of the year is actually AI agents. I've actually just prior to this webinar been at a customer of ours, which is Robin Rocks, and Robin Rocks is a real estate AI agent. So it's not a heavy development in itself, but it's quite important that we sit down with the key users here, and we did an adoption training on that. And once you spark the interest and all of the possibilities, that's where you actually also get all of these use cases that are coming out of it. So indeed, there is an expectation of instant, but there's also an understanding of, or still searching of, what are the most use cases actually going to be. That means that you really have to educate people on what are the pros and cons of AI, but also what are the limitations that you might face, as well as ChatGPT gives everyone the expectation it needs to happen immediately. While that is something that is actually not quite true, where you need to learn skills like how to use prompting and where you need to align it to your business processes, like we did with that real estate agent. It's basically a shell around ChatGPT, but then tailored towards the business process of what a real estate agent in the Netherlands would be doing. So you really try to make bespoke scenarios more towards the customers.
But the challenges for us, I think, and Dynamics partners over the coming years is to prove our value continuously now with new AI-driven processes and use cases, like you say, right? And I think that, where we are today, it's really the moment to start thinking about an AI strategy for your company, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's also a bit of a different strategy, is what I see. It's gone away from the large software implementations to be more an advisor, to help more with change management, so people get used to it. It's a different way of consulting.
Yeah. And when we look at our stack, let's say the products that we have, we can also say that today AI is already embedded in all of the Microsoft Dynamics 365 apps. Let's say it's in Business Central, it's in customer engagement, it's in finance and supply chain management. So, Microsoft is making Copilot and AI the standard in all of these programs. So that reminds me, many decades ago, or a few decades ago, it was developers. Then it became cloud, and today it is AI, right?
Yeah, Microsoft is talking themselves about another platform shift. You could also compare it to phone and cloud. Now we are all hooked on our phones. 20 years ago, that was very different, and a phone was not even imaginable, and now it's going to be AI.
Yeah, it's going to be AI, and we have also heard, I think, all the visions of Satya Nadella on the agentic architecture behind all the business apps. So there is a lot that is going to change. So in a summary, I think for AI, the time to act is now. So the adoption is incredibly fast. We need to take a more holistic approach. It's not only about Microsoft's products, but it's also the use cases that we develop with it. We will need an AI strategy, and AI is for Microsoft already the standard. And that's the reason I think also why we have this webinar today. I think, we need to realize that the moment for AI is today. And before we're going to jump into the EU Act, let's also have a look at the collaboration between Digital Bricks and Companion, sorry. So everybody here on the call, or the majority of you know who Companion is, right? We are a official SMB ERP distributor, an indirect CSP provider, an ISV developer center, a Microsoft Learning partner, of course, and an inner circle member. And of course, our mission is to help partners excel. And I think, the moment is also here to say that we can also help you with AI. And to do that, we are joining forces, Companion together, let's say, with Digital Bricks in this collaboration. And maybe Jamie or Max, you can elaborate a little bit more on Digital Bricks.
Sure. If we talk about Digital Bricks, then we are also in AI education. We implement AI ourselves, but I think our benefit was that over the last 2 years, we developed AI adoption accelerators in different kinds of ways, been training people on applications like ChatGPT, but obviously also Microsoft Copilot. And yeah, if we basically take over the slides, then we see that we take our customers or every customer that we have on a 7-step journey of artificial intelligence. And most of the customers, as you say, Vincent, everyone is now understanding the AI potential. Everyone is talking about it. They are at step 1. Basically, step 1 to 3 is what we call the awareness phase, in which you define an AI strategy, to refer a little bit to what Vincent just said. This is the area where customers, but also Dynamics partners or Microsoft partners, are defining from, okay, what do we actually want to do with AI? We all heard about the massive productivity increases that it promises. MIT is saying 40% of the workforce productivity can be gained with artificial intelligence, which comes down to nearly half an FTE. But what else might there be behind this? Is it just workforce productivity, or could you start automizing things? Or are we really experiencing the platform shift that Satya Nadella is talking about? So that is where we help organizations from a strategy point. So in step number 2, we basically help them to identify what their actual end goal is, define the KPIs, what they want to achieve with their AI implementation strategy. And funny enough, although a lot of people are scared about AI, I think that people are actually the most important asset in this. And that is where we see step number 3, evaluating the internal capabilities. Because if you upskill and reskill your workforce to fit the AI age, to fit this new platform shift, you basically transform them into business success in the future. And although AI can take a lot of work out of the hands, it's just another technology that improves the capabilities and brings us value back. While these first 3 steps are more the strategic approach, we then believe in step number 4, that's once you've evaluated those things, that's when you should be going into implementation. While the classical Microsoft partner approach is more, okay, we first start with implementation, we start about the hours and we want to do large projects. These steps 1, 2, 3 now become fundamental because it's a new technology. In step 4, 5, and 6 is what the typical Microsoft partner does, like building or integrating the applications then into the landscape of the customer, testing out the AI system, measuring and evaluating the performance of it, how it's improving certain things, and of course, continuously developing it further and improving that. But that's why we have these 3 streams where we say that's where Microsoft partners and any customer that wants to implement AI actually now needs to look at. And that's strategy, implementation, and above all, upskilling and reskilling, because if you teach them, then basically they understand. And that's why we were very keen to partner with Companion and develop a learning journey that basically helps both partners as well as customers to achieve that aspect. And if you then look at what we bring as a business to the table, then in essence, we support Platan in the Companion in the development of the learning journey, but we can also help with AI strategy. We are change management certified trainers, ProSci certified. Part of us is also Microsoft certified trainers. And therefore, we believe that the most value that you actually get is out of role and application specific training. Because if people know how to use AI in a context of a BC, of a Dynamics, then they really get enabled, because everyone that is using AI is using it for a different use case. A marketeer wants to use that maybe in his CRM application to create engaging content, while a finance and an accountant expert wants to use it within an ERP context of Dynamics to retrieve information out of that. And of course, we do some services around that, like Copilot and Azure AI implementations and data cleaning. And that's where we work together with Companion to bring an offering to the table that helps Dynamics partners as well as customers of them to excel.
Okay, good. Then I think we are nearly ready to look at the EU AI Act, right? So I think you can take the floor with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, a main chunk of the webinar now is to understand what the EU AI Act is. And we present a slide here which really gives a broad overview. The Act itself is quite vast, 180 articles, 9,000 words, over 400 pages. So getting through all that today is going to be quite difficult, but we try to give a good understanding and give you some broad knowledge of some of the key aspects of what to take away from today. The Act has essentially a number of goals, and the first goal is to drive innovation. It's not there to stiff innovation. It's not there to stop your organization growing. It's there to provide guidelines and to guide you in a way that will help you use these systems in a way that benefits your organization. Now, the Act is not just there for business use. It's there to serve individuals within the European Union. And so it's of a priority of the European Union to prioritize people's health. If we think about artificial intelligence in the medical domain or within healthcare, really sensitive environments, it's important to prioritize the health of these individuals when using these systems. The second thing to prioritize is safety. Artificial intelligence is going to be embedded into almost every product and service that individuals within the union and worldwide are going to be using. So it's important that those products are safe. And then thirdly, if we think about fundamental rights, in the European Union, we have the Charter of Fundamental Rights, the right to a fair trial, the right to a marriage, the right to dignity, freedom, things like this. It's important that AI systems, once implemented, take these considerations and apply them when analyzing the risk of those systems. Article 2 in the AI Act is the definitions, and there's 100 or so definitions of different terminology which is used. But I think it's quite important for us to all understand what the EU classifies as an AI system. And the text that you can see there, the paragraph, is aligned with the OECD. It's a globally recognized definition of AI. But rather than looking at all the white text, it's probably more important for us to focus in on the blue text, which infers from an input it receives how to generate outputs. And that's a very fairly simple and basic understanding of what AI actually is. It doesn't mention anything like deep learning or neural networks or frameworks like TensorFlow. It's essentially just a very broad aspect from very simple algorithms all the way through to complex algorithms. And one of the reasons why the EU does this is because they've established from the past that very simple algorithms can have a detrimental effect, both positive and negative. So it's important that this legislation basically covers every different type of system. On the right-hand side, we've detailed a bunch of things that we think are quite significant. Firstly, if we think about scope, although this legislation is written for use in the European Union, it doesn't just affect organizations in the EU. If you're an organization operating out of the United States or Asia or Australia, anywhere else in the world, you serve as customers or provide an AI system to organizations within the European Union, you also have obligations under this Act. So it's quite a far-reaching scope. In the Act, this is defined as the extraterritorial scope. You'll be able to find that under Article 3 if you want to read more on that scope. The Act classifies AI systems on a risk-based approach. So that isn't taken into consideration, as we say, the level of technology used. It's more about how does this AI system affect the end user? How is your employee or your customer going to feel the effects of this AI system? So really, the EU classifies these systems from prohibited, which are banned, all the way down to minimal risk and everything in between based on that approach. How does this affect individuals' health, safety, fundamental rights? We'll get into this a little bit more later on in the webinar, but that is just a brief overview. If we think about exemptions, it's not unusual for EU legislation to have exemptions for things like military or national security, but in this case, there's certain exemptions to open source AI systems. So organizations who are approaching an AI strategy from an angle of using an open source system won't have to oblige to certain transparency obligations or providing certain documentation. So it's something to really consider when you're setting out those first stones, as Max says, in the strategy stage. In terms of penalties, Obviously, it's something we can't ignore. With legislation comes penalties. The Act has quite a large capacity to fine. I think it goes up to 35 million euros or 7% of global annual turnover, which is, we can only make a comparison here to GDPR, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. And GDPR has a total capacity of 20 million euros or 4%, which is almost double capacity. And whilst we're on the subject of GDPR, there is many crossovers between GDPR and the AI Act. If we think about data minimization, accuracy, things like this, legal basis, there's many crossovers, but there's also one key difference, which Vincent mentions at the outset of the webinar, is that the speed in which this technology is moving really differs to GDPR. If we think about back to 2016, 2017, there was ample opportunity. There was many questions around how to set governance structures up and adaptability to data governance and what is a DPO. And some of those questions will arise now. There's a lot of familiarities, but really all your processes and governance and things really need to be adaptable, because the speed of AI and how it's moving really puts that difference in place from GDPR.
And it's quite important to also state here, if you refer again to that blue text, generates output. AI can generate output that might be breaching GDPR. We have examples where customers came to us and asked for governance help because they implemented an AI system that did an amazing job on knowledge retrieval. Over thousands of documents it retrieved knowledge for them. But suddenly employees were able to find out the salary of their colleagues, which is of course not the use case that you want to have. And those could be data breaches that inflict. So there's a correlation between the EU AI Act and what has been discussed in GDPR, which you need to be very aware of.
Of course, Max. And, as we say, there's crossovers. We think about purpose limitation, which is mentioned in both the AI Act and the GDPR. GDPR doesn't go away. It stays in. This is basically building on GDPR. And we think about penalties. They can compound. It's not one penalty for AI Act and one penalty for GDPR. You can be fined under both when you have an AI system that processes personal data, which I imagine a lot of these large language models plugged in to business data will be doing. So moving on to the next slide. Again, if we compare this to GDPR, I'm sure we can all cast our minds back to 16, 17. This is a little bit different how the EU brings this legislation into force. With the GDPR, we were given notification that it was implemented in 2016, and then a 2-year break until it come into force in 18, which gave us a lot of time to prepare. But the Artificial Intelligence Act is brought into play in a staggered approach, and the EU does this based on what they believe are the most critical and important priorities in terms of articles. So on the 2nd of February, just a week ago, the first articles come into force, which are Articles 1 through to Article 5, and they take into consideration prohibited systems, definitions and scope, like we just discussed. And then one of the more important articles, which we're going to discuss in more depth today, is AI literacy and the obligation for organizations to provide education to their employees, staff, and also broader as a society. Then on the 2nd of August 2025, rules around governance obligations and general purpose AI systems will come applicable. And then by the end of 2026, 2nd of August, we'll see all of the legislation come into force. And that's when we imagine fining and obligation and written warnings will really start coming into play. So that brings us on to the risk-based approach, which we briefly mentioned a couple of slides ago. And this is how the EU establishes the level of obligation and the level of transparency that your AI system has to provide. So we'll run through this in a triangle approach. At the top, we have unacceptable risk. So coming into force a week ago is prohibited systems. This is Article 5 of the legislation. And this is 8 specific types of systems that the EU doesn't want. They don't want anybody to build. They don't want anybody to deal with. And this covers things like real-time biometric surveillance in public places. It also includes subliminal manipulation, things like social scoring systems, predictive policing. There's a bunch of different systems for you to go and read in Article 5. Many of these systems, we envisage that not many organizations in this webinar will probably be looking into, but it's important to have an understanding of what the EU doesn't want to see. Then if we think about high-risk systems, these are systems that pose a significant risk to those things that we mentioned earlier: health, safety, and fundamental rights. You can imagine systems like this are dealing with making decisions in the hiring process or risk analysis of legal basis, things like this where it involves making a decision, a critical decision which affects a human in a way. Then we move further down to limited risk. These are systems that partially affect the human rights or the safety or health of individuals. So a little bit less, more automation, a little bit less of an impact and a context. There's transparency obligations for these kind of systems. If we think about chatbots or AI agents, the obligations there are to identify to the human user that this is not a human that you're speaking to, this is a chatbot, this is an AI agent. So there's some significant obligations around these systems also. And then moving to the bottom of the list is minimal risk. Systems like spam filters, non-critical chatbots, grammar checkers, things like this, where there's no pose to rights, health, or safety. Now, an important factor of the EU AI Act is the GPAI, which is abbreviated from General Purpose AI Models. These are large language models like ChatGPT, or in this case, Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, where the provider of the model, i.e. Microsoft, has created this of such a large amount of data that there is no specific use case initially envisaged for this model. The onus and the liability basically sways from the provider to you, the deployer, as to what you use this model for, which kind of use case are you going to align it with. And as Max says, at the outset of your AI journey, when you're defining your strategy and you're finding these use cases, it's probably an important factor to consider of where does your use case sit on the risk pyramid, because GPAIs have the ability to scale across this list depending on your use case. If we take an example, let's think about using Copilot in Microsoft Word to draft a job description. There's not going to be any risk for anybody. They're using the out-of-the-box solution, and there's a human who's checking the document and then sending the job description out. So minimal risk. Then let's say an individual in your organization wants to take that same idea, go to Copilot Studio, create an agent that's going to screen these CVs that come in from this hiring process and make decisions as to whether the agent believes, based on the company data, whether these individuals are eligible for that role or whether it thinks it's not suited for that role. The human has oversight. They put the CV one by one in, so there's limited risk. Then if we take it one step further, someone in the organization wants to bring this across the whole organization, automate the hiring process. Now the AI agent is screening 500 CVs a month. It's making decisions whether it believes a candidate is eligible or not. It's sending out emails to those candidates to either organize a interview or to reject their application. And therefore we go into the high risk AI system. And each one of these systems will have different obligations under the Act to provide different documentation. Do you want to touch on anything there, Max, about?
Yeah, I think we thought about some interaction in the webinar, and we are actually curious to find out what the audience as well is experiencing. And therefore we created two polls, one where we want to understand, thinking back about the 7-step approach that we have, where are you in your landscape? Have you already identified use cases? And then as a second poll, first I'll let everyone answer. We want to talk about these risk things. So the poll should be popping up. I hope that works for everyone. You got the option between yes, no, and still working on it. Couple of yes I see, and the main part is working on it. So that really comes also to the picture that we see in the market, that most of the organizations are in step 1, 2, 3. Few no's as well. Hey, I see 20 responses so far. A couple of more people are in the webinar. Please don't be shy. Let's give it one more moment and then we'll move on. Good. Let's have a look at the second poll, which is more talking about risk for the ones that are currently working on it or that already have implemented use cases. Where do you think you are at? High, limited, minimal, or I don't know? And I just want to come back shortly on what Jamie said there. And the general purpose AI models, I always explain it like this. Generative AI, as the name says, is quite general, trained on all of the knowledge or on massive data sets, and therefore generates a general response. That might be something where you think, okay, you're in a minimal risk area, but as soon as you apply it to different areas or even your resources where you sometimes don't have control on which kind of context they use that, might bring you into a high risk area. And that's indeed what we've seen at customers in the HR space, because there you process personal data, but what we also see in medical and healthcare, where data might be exposed. Okay, I think we see 27 responses. More wanted to answer on that question. A lot of you believe they are somewhere in between, limited. Okay, only a couple of high and a lot of minimal. For the ones that mentioned, I don't know, feel free also to reach out to us, and we are happy to help you guide on this. Thanks for contributing into the poll, and let's move on to the last slide on the EU AI Act, which is probably the most important one. Jamie, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, our business essentially revolves around this act, and we believe it is the most important part of the EU AI Act. And considering that it's a article that comes into force, well, has come into force a week ago, and it was alongside prohibited systems, it's one of the biggest priorities of the European Union to make sure that organizations and society as a whole understands that AI literacy is something that is a significant skill that we need to embed in our organizations and embed in our society. It's definitely something that we need to be talking about more and trying to define it in a way. So essentially, what is AI literacy? It's we believe it's a set of competencies that means skills, knowledge, or understanding. If we think about AI literacy, it is a really broad thing. It covers all different aspects, whether that be the ethical dilemmas of AI, whether that be the governance aspects or AI basics. And it's really for the organization to decide where they believe AI literacy sits within their processes, both on a role specific basis and also within teams, and then broader up the line in terms of value. If we think about certain sets of competencies, just as simple as understanding the definition of what AI is, things like this can really set the foundations for individuals on their learning journeys. Max mentions the importance of prompting. Sometimes we have discussions with businesses who don't believe that prompting is a skill, and that because we've got access to natural language AI systems now, that we can speak to them in any way and we will generate an output. And for sure, in some cases, that is, you can spit anything at ChatGPT and I'm sure it'll give you an answer. It's really obliging to you and it's really kind. But really, if you want to get the most benefits out of artificial intelligence and particularly Copilot in your organization, it's important that prompt engineering takes a front stand. And in the learning journeys, you'll see that we center a whole module around setting the foundations around what AI is, where it come from, the history of AI. These are all important foundations for your employees and people who are using these systems to understand that it's not just ChatGPT, which was brought out, and that is the beginning of AI. This is a vast history which dates back to the 1950s, and this has been a development process to where we are now, and that'll alleviate a lot of fears and create a solid foundation, as Max likes to say, to AI skeptics and turn them around into understanding, okay, this is something that can genuinely help me. And then once we've defined what AI literacy is to us, we spoke back to the article, and the article is quite vague in some of the wording, particularly vague in the first two lines. Providers and deployers of AI systems shall take measures to ensure, to their best extent, a sufficient level of AI literacy to their staff. So, to their best extent. One person's best extent is different to another, and also a sufficient level. One individual could classify a sufficient level as different to another, and it's important for you to grasp your understanding on what you believe is an AI literacy program that's going to benefit your organization most. But if we think about the bare minimum, a couple of weeks ago in a webinar at the AI Pact in Brussels, a lot of this talk was around this vagueness of the Act, and people wanted more clarity on it. And the EU was able to establish that, yeah, there will be codes of conduct that come out in the future, probably within the next few months. But as for now, it's to understand that a sufficient level will not be classified as the instruction manual. So by plugging in Copilot and having just throw somebody the instruction manual or the bare minimum level of education and resources, that's not going to be classed as a sufficient level. You need to really take an iterative approach. It needs to be role specific. You need to provide ample opportunities for people to learn in different settings, in different environments, whether that's e-learning, workshops, on-site, remote. You really need to, if you're going to embed these systems into your organization, take a real approach to AI literacy as something that's of significant importance.
Yeah, that has also been confirmed this week by Emmanuel Macron, the EU AI Action Summit, where they said a literacy program needs to be built and established within an organization that wants to implement AI. So it's not just the Microsoft documentation. It's nothing that you as a Microsoft partner in the future that wants to implement AI just simply can ignore, because your customers will have this as a requirement that basically comes with it. And that's also bringing us to, let's say, the third topic of this webinar, which is building your own AI literacy program, where we basically talk about a couple of slides on how to implement certain steps that basically enable you to build your own program within the organization. So typically we advise companies in a 5-step approach. We say, okay, first of all, it's important to communicate the importance of AI literacy, that there is a need to align your stakeholders and drive awareness that a literacy program is there. As Jamie said, there needs to be ample possibility for them to learn. Second of all, you need to develop an AI literacy value proposition, and you need to collect earning and learning, as we always tend to say, because once they understand AI, once they've went on that learning journey and understand the potential that lays behind this, you will also start earning more. That's when the productivity increases and the KPI improvements come into place. As organizations, you should determine what kind of AI literacy needs you have. And as Microsoft partners, of course, Companion and our collaboration is a strong offering because it delivers you what you are searching for. But you can also think about designing and delivering your own program, but at the pace and speed AI is going, this will be a tough aspect, because if you look at point number 5, you see this is a feedback loop. You will always have to assess that literacy program. You will have to iterate, adapt, and extend on it. And that's basically what we will be taking care of for you. And also, if you look at what the European Union sees as a broad overview of AI skills, they also categorize it, and we recommend to categorize it as well into 5 different subjects, which is AI value. So what are you generating with AI? How is that bringing the business further? Foundations, and then I refer to skills like prompting, but also basic understandings of machine learning and different kind of aspects. You also have the engineering, which is probably not so important for most of the resources, but especially for the core resources that we call AI experts and champions that you want to build within your organization. And then the last 2 aspects, which are governance, so monitoring your AI and putting it into a good framework, but also the ethical use, because if we come back to that example of the hiring process where we build an AI agent, if that hiring agent is going to make decisions for you, how are you going to judge these decisions? They should be non-biased. A hiring process might have some different cultural benefits that you want to look at. So you should be able to judge if AI is acting on a non-biased way, yes or no. Building such a literacy program is amplifying a business, because that's where we see the use cases of AI being built. Start at the individual value, foundational skills, have people within your organization use AI, and that inspires quick wins. If someone sees that he can summarize a document quite easily with ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, then he will be thinking about using that as well. Get that wow effect into your organization. And from there, from the individual value, you basically have a bottom-up approach. It grows into departmental value. It grows into building agents that maybe orchestrate a whole organizational value and benefit. And then you basically see the KPIs and improvements that Copilot promises to bring, like bringing down cost per hire, improve meeting and organizations, summarizing information, but also business KPIs like departmental spending, creation of leads, number of opportunities that you can create within sales. For all of the organizations that are interested, we also co-branded alongside our learning journeys a couple of white papers that will be shared with you after the webinar on how to build your AI policy and how to build such a governance structure and literacy program within your organization, alongside with the Copilot, with the Companion and Digital Bricks learning journeys. And with that, let's introduce you to these learning journeys, because I think that's the point where a lot of this effort that goes into it is already being taken care of with that collaboration between Companion and Digital Bricks.
Sorry, I was muted. So I said, okay, thank you, Max and Jamie. Let's have a look indeed at the learning journeys. For those who don't know what learning journeys are, so this is our subscription-based learning offering from Companion. I will show it to you in a minute. Up until today, we had a number of learning journeys for BC developers, BC consultants, customer engagement professionals, finance and supply chain professionals, and Power Platform professionals. But today we are also launching, so it is live already since an hour or two. We have launched our AI learning journey, and I would say see it as a start into a AI literacy program, which is already shaped for you and which is available for you if you have a learning journey subscription. And what is inside of that AI learning journey at this moment? So you can see we have 3 levels there, which is proficient, progress, and specialize. And the first level is always proficient. So that means it is these include foundational courses on the first level. So the first session that we have is an expert session with an MVP who's going to explain what is AI, what is the background of AI, what is happening in the world of AI, what is important for you to understand about AI in general. And then the second course, and we will elaborate in more detail in a second, is the course which has also been created by Digital Bricks, by Max and Jamie. It's called the Core Microsoft Copilot User Guide. So this also gives you an introduction and foundational level into everything you need to know about Copilot. Once that you're through that knowledge, you can move on to the progress level, where you will find a second course, Advanced Microsoft Copilot User Guide, also created by Digital Bricks, by Jamie and Max and their team, which will bring you to the next level into Copilot kind of knowledge. And I think it's also important to understand that these are both self-paced courses, so you can start them at any moment. They're online, they are available in the learning journey. You will be redirected to a learning management system, and there you can start at any moment working on these both courses. I also took the courses, and I can tell you, I learned a lot, and it's pretty interesting, I think. But for us, of course, in terms of Companion in supporting Dynamics partners with an AI literacy program, this is not where it stops, because of course Copilot and general knowledge on Copilot is very important, but it's also very important that we keep the connection also with AI in our core products. And so we have already 3 expert sessions about Copilot for Power Apps, Copilot for Power Automate, Copilot, extending Copilot with Copilot Studio. But we just also recently added a new course which is coming, and that is Implement AI Models with Microsoft Power Platform AI Builder. So I think that course will be launched in a few weeks with the first sessions. And then we also have Developing Generative AI for Extensions with the Copilot Toolkit in Business Central. That's what we have today. But like I said, it's a start. And I think you can expect in the coming months much more programs into this AI learning journey, so that it also can function as a literacy program for AI. And let me try to share a little bit to visualize it for you also, the learning journey. So I think you can see that now. So you see it here. So this is the participant portal of learning journey. So as you can see, you can activate a BC consultant learning journey, a BC developer learning journey, a customer engagement learning journey, a finance and supply chain management learning journey, a Power Platform learning journey, and as of today, we also have the AI learning journey. So you can see that all these courses are listed here now. You can start today if you want with the core Microsoft Copilot Users Guide. You can subscribe for expert sessions. You can subscribe for the AI Builder course, and so on. And this will only expand with much more programs in the coming months, because like I said in the beginning, it's extremely important that we realize that AI is starting today. It started yesterday. It's not only the future, it's here, it's in our products. It will change how we operate. It will change what customers do expect of us. And that means that we need to start working on this. And I also wanted to look back on what Jamie was saying about AI literacy and what Max was saying. And I think that, with AI literacy, a program like this, of course, you will become much more compliant with the EU Act, and that's important. But that it will also help you to drive innovation, I think, in your organization, because your employees get inspired with what they learn. They see new potential. They see new possibilities. They learn new solution heuristics, and by talking with each other about that new knowledge, they will envision new use cases, and that might be very important for your AI strategy. So I think it's a wheel that we need to get turning, so that innovation related to AI can start in your company today. I don't know, Max and Jamie, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on the 2 courses that we have?
Yeah, I think there's a very good question about that already in the chat, and that was about what about the Microsoft's latest Copilot Studio. For your information, the basic and the advanced course that we have, they actually span across 6 modules and 126 lectures. Microsoft offers 19 different types of Copilots, from the Microsoft 365 Copilots, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, your typical Office suite, towards the free-to-use Bing Copilot chatbots, towards Copilots within the Dynamics and Power Platform context, which is more the business application layer. But also, we have a complete module, and that is actually the biggest module on Copilot Studio, to help you build your own agents and even enrich them with Azure AI Foundry. So we really try to cover everything the Microsoft platform has to offer that goes into a Copilot context. On Azure AI Foundry, we are working out more content as we go, but we already cover in this course, for example, how Copilot Studio can be connected to Azure AI Foundry. Yeah, that is, I think.
So Max, if a person follows core Microsoft Copilot User Guide and the advanced Microsoft Copilot User Guide, would you say that this person is then, good in terms of knowledge and literacy on what Copilot can do, and use that and define use cases coming out of that kind of learning?
Yeah, I think with the core course, you are covered for, let's say, the typical knowledge worker, as we would say. So the context of someone that is using the different Office applications and a standard Copilot course. With the advanced course, you really go into more into depth. You can build AI applications yourself with that. You basically become a citizen AI developer for artificial intelligence. So you should be really fundamental there. 100% compliance you will not achieve with that, but at least the aspect of EU AI Act paragraph 4 AI literacy should be given, because to your best extent you started learning. You become compliant in also doing additional change management and best practices and setting the right governance structure into place. So a literacy program is one aspect for becoming compliant. Thinking about all of the other articles and what's coming into place later next year, that's really a business activity that you need to do. But you have a solid foundation to check the box of a literacy program with it.
Yeah. Okay, good. So those were the two courses that we just mentioned, the courses that your team created. So I think we discussed that already. What about the slides?
Yeah, that is basically the main goal that we have with this learning journey, is taking your workforce, maybe your customers' workforce, maybe Dynamics partners that I also see in the market right now, from really being skeptics, hey, should we invest into this, and turning them into what we call power users and AI champions, taking them really through the practice where we believe education is what's going to drive the growth within your organization, and it offers a massive potential, and hopefully it starts with our learning journeys.
Okay. Then I want to thank you, Max and Jamie, for the elaboration on the EU Act and the link with the AI literacy. For the people listening here, so I would say, if you want to know more about our learning journeys, we're always here. You can request a demo if you want, or you can take contact with your PSM. Remember that as of today, as of now, the AI learning journey is already active in there. And I think this webinar about AI and the EU Act was focusing on the learning part and the educational part, the literacy. But we will soon also organize a new event where we will talk also more about adopting AI in your organization. So I think that brings us to the end of this webinar. If you still have questions, you can still pose them. I think we have 6 minutes left. You can do that live if you want, or you can pull them in the chat. And if not, thank you for participating, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to all the participants. Where will we find recording of this webinar? I missed a bit on the beginning due to another meeting going over. I think the marketing teams of both Companion as well as Digital Bricks, depending on from which audience you joined, will make sure that you will get the content. Everyone that is or has registered will get a recording of it, as well as the free white papers that we've created.